Hey, we are your hosts, Nick Smith.
And Kylie Jo Smith. And today's episode is called You Got a Friend in Me.
Hey.
You got a friend in me.
Go. Hey.
I don't remember the rest of the words.
Oh,
I just
okay.
know that it's a really good song.
What we're talking about is what it really means to be an ally. But before we get started, you already know what the deal is. Stop what you're doing and share it.
Share it. Click it.
Click it.
Or
right.
tick it. No, that's not right.
Click it or miss it. That didn't rhyme at all. I'll go back to the drawing board. But make sure you share this with somebody. Let somebody know what you're listening to. We'd love for them to join our conversation.
Yes, we totally forgot to give a shout out last week to our friends. We were so excited about the topic we were discussing. We forgot to shout out our friends in Topeka, the Crable family.
What's up, Crable family?
You guys are awesome. We love you.
How y'all doing?
And we miss you. But this week, we also want to shout out a very special lady. You may have heard us talk about how we want to honor our essential workers. We want to give honor where honor is due. And there are a lot of people right now who have been working very hard to make sure that we have the things that we need, that you have the things that you need. And a lot of them are nameless to most of us. It's like, oh, yeah, that's my FedEx guy. That's my UPS guy.
That's right.
Et cetera. And so we want to feature this week Lacey Jones.
Lacey Jones, shout out.
Lacey is a nurse here in Kansas, and she works at a family practice clinic. And another nurse, Monette Coker, has nominated her. Here's what Monette had to say. She said, I work at a large clinic, and there is a nurse there who has worked in our COVID clinic daily. She is dressed in full protective gear all day, 5 days a week. She does it with a smile and never complains. I want her to know how proud I am of her and her sacrifices. She unselfishly gives to patients and our clinic. Thank you, Lacey Jones.
Lacey Jones, thank you so much.
Yes.
What we want to do, Lacey, if you are on social media at all, share this episode and tag us.
Yeah.
And we will get a hold of you and we will send you some cool NixMyth stuff.
Yes. And for those of you that don't know, the COVID clinics that are happening are where people can be screened. And the people who have to work there, including Lacey, are wearing, it's not just like a gown and like one of those masks that you see people wearing in the grocery store. It's like a full gown. A lot of times there's
like a hazmat suit
yeah,
almost. Yeah.
And it's hot. It's uncomfortable. They don't get to like touch people or really like interact with them the same way that you and I do. So it's a huge sacrifice.
Yeah, it really is. Thank you so much.
For people like Lacey. Yeah. So thank you for serving. And I hope that very soon you are able to get out.
Yes. And if you have anyone that is an essential worker who has been serving you or your family during this COVID-19 time, shoot us a message and let us know who they are so that we can give them a shout out, give them some recognition, and so that we can connect with them. Yeah. So please do that.
Yes. All right. So now on to the subject.
Now back to the lesson at hand.
Yeah.
Perfection is different. Okay, sorry.
Don't know that one.
So what we're talking about today is what it means to be an ally. Now, if you don't know what an ally is,
look it up.
Look it up on the computer. You have all of the information of history at your hands. So
that needs much discernment.
It does, a lot of discernment.
Filtering through.
But what we're talking about is there are a lot of causes out there that don't personally affect us individually, but that we have sympathy or that we want to join in the fight. We want to be an ally for these people who are in the trenches. And a lot of us have privileges that we have been born with that we never paid for, but that privilege is to be leveraged in order to stop those who are being oppressed from being oppressed or to speak out against those who have been hurt. Yeah. And obviously there's a lot of stuff going on right now. And if you don't know what's going on, you are probably a more peaceful person in your soul. But just so you know, there is a whole lot, especially if you live in Minnesota, there is a ton happening. There was a riot, there were buildings destroyed, all sorts of stuff happening because of the murder of Brother George Lloyd. Yeah. And so there was a peaceful protest that led to a riot. And one thing that got us talking about this is we've had a lot of our friends who are not African American, who are not people of color, who have reached out and said, hey, I don't know what to do. Like, I feel bad, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I carry the weight of this, but I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And so how do I effectively align myself with the cause and not just waste time and energy by clickety-clacking on a keyboard?
Yeah, because it's really easy to do.
Yeah.
It's so easy to share an article or to voice your frustration on social media and then kind of feel good about it in the moment, but then realize like that didn't actually go any farther than my news feed.
Which sometimes that's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But what I've experienced, and I'm sure you have too, I know you have, is we have friends that want to speak into the situation. They want to speak life, good Christian brothers and sisters that want to help, but they just go about it in the wrong way.
Yeah.
They have good intentions, great intentions.
Yes. Right
but
spirit, right heart.
It just doesn't connect. They're missing something.
Yeah.
And so I know you got a story about that. Tell me about the time you've
Yes.
experienced this.
Okay, so I was leading a Bible study, and I remember it was right around the time that something had happened with regard to racial injustice.
Mm-hmm.
There have been so many times over the past 6 years, especially, that I don't really remember what situation it was, but I know I was like, oh, we have to talk about this tonight. We have to bring this to the table. And in most of the church settings we've been in, we are the only people of color, or we're one of very few. And it was the same situation. And so I bring to the table like, hey guys, I really want to discuss this with you as church folks, brothers and sisters. And I had like a quote from another teacher that we follow, Eric Mason. I was like, this is what he says about it. What do you guys believe? And the response, there was mixed responses. We had some youth who were actually a part of that Bible study who were like, and I love this generation because they're so on fire for things. This young person was like, I think this is wrong, and we have to stand up for people, and we're not really following Jesus. This is not like, it was just yes, you need to preach on Sunday kind of material. And then someone who wasn't of that generation was like, well, you know, I don't agree with racism. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right to judge people based on their skin color, but I don't do that. I treat everyone the same. Yeah. I don't see color. And then and then another response was, well, that's really terrible. Like, Black people have, I don't doubt that there have been racial injustices in our nation's history. Very specific language. But
oh, here it is.
There's always a huge but.
There's big old
Nobody
butts.
likes a big but right in the middle of
some people like big butts, but
but anyway, so I was like, but this is really, people in my family experience injustice all the time. And then there was the comparison of this to where it eventually got reduced down to like an issue of like two people having an argument about something and one person being right, another person being wrong. Like it was reduced down to something that was like, no, we're not taking over like hundreds and hundreds of years of oppression, and we're not equating that with something like that. Really? Are we? And so it left me feeling kind of deflated, like, oh, I should have never even tried to have this conversation with people in the church.
Well, one of my not favorite situations, because I don't like it, but something
we rate them.
Yeah, it's 1 to 10. This one's probably a 7.5-ish. But no, I remember having a conversation with someone, and they were so upset because of some racial injustice, and they were venting about how terrible like African American neighborhoods are. Basically saying like, man, like the people that live in these neighborhoods, again, the people that live in these neighborhoods, I mean, there's just a lot, they're on drugs, and there's a lot of violence and all this stuff. And then they caught themselves in the middle of saying this, and they're like, well, I mean, I'm not talking about like all African American, like Nick, like you guys, like your family, you guys are different. And it's like, how am I supposed to take that? Everyone else is smelly, but you smell fine, even though you should, by all accounts of all the logic I just
of everything I've just said. I think you're smelly, but I don't. Yeah,
but not you. You're the not smelly one. And it's almost said in a way like, listen, I want to validate you as a person because you're my friend, and I really want to validate you, but I also have these biases that I can't seem to shake.
Yeah.
And so it's coming like they're trying to relate, and they're trying to give some sort of like, hey, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah. But
listen to all this garbage I'm bringing. And it was that exceptionalism.
Yeah.
A lot of times it comes from a place of like, I think you're an awesome person.
Yeah.
But then it goes a step further to be like, not like the rest of the people that look like you.
Exactly. You are the exception because everyone else that I've encountered that looks like you, everything else I see in the media of people that look like you tells me that your people are awful.
Yeah. The people
and scary.
Your whole family, anyone that you've ever had pour into your life is probably a heathen, but you're great. You're good. Anyone you've ever loved is terrible, but you're awesome. Yeah. Like you're
a credit.
You're a credit to your race. And so what we're saying, and we're not trying to rag on these people, because again, those were opportunities for us to extend grace, for us to teach in those moments and say, hey, what you said, I hear where you're coming from and I get it, but that's still really offensive.
Yeah.
Like that's still really, you're not getting the point.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of ways that people can get it wrong. And so we usually end our podcast talking about practicality. I don't know why I keep saying it like that. Practicalifornia. We talk about practically what can you do. But we're going to start off with what are some things that people are doing that want to be an ally, but they're just getting it wrong.
Yeah. So, yeah. And in our testimonies, you probably heard some of those examples. We'll go through them.
What you got?
One of them is, did I cover it in my story? Infantilizing?
Yeah, infantilizing.
Okay, yeah. Infantilizing. So, gosh, it sounds kind of, or it is kind of what it sounds like. You are making what you're talking about almost an infant-like state.
Yeah.
And so like what you're saying is like, oh, you poor thing.
You're like condescending.
Yes.
It's like you're looking down on someone else's struggle and you're like, oh man, that's just like
when I stub my toe. I totally know what you're saying. It's the exact same thing as when I go to the grocery store and like the lady behind the counter won't let me have paper bags when I clearly asked for paper bags.
Well, I have a funny story about that. So I took a lot of women's studies classes, and one of my courses that I took, I can't remember, I think we were talking about women's suffrage, and there was a young man who was obviously not raised in a very progressive household, didn't really understand.
And obviously not a woman.
He was young, very obviously a young man. And we were talking about the struggle for women's rights, and he goes, wait, let me see if I get this right.
Oh no.
And I, being one of the few men in the class, was like, oh, dude, please just hush.
You're like, please don't say
just
anything.
Shut your mouth for just a second. Like, just stop now.
Class is almost over.
Yeah, no, he took a big breath. He's like, I got some stuff to say.
Oh.
He said, okay, so it's kind of like when you're a kid and you really you ask your parents to mow the lawn, and you want to mow the lawn, but you're too young, and they keep telling you, no, you can't mow the lawn, you can't mow the lawn. And then when you finally get the opportunity to mow the lawn and your parents say, yeah, then all of a sudden it's now your chore. You have to mow the lawn every week. And now it's not as fun. Like, is that kind of what we're talking about?
So women getting the right to vote is like...
Just like a little kid who wants to mow the lawn.
Oh my
And
goodness.
you could have, oh my goodness. I thought he was going to get bum rushed about that place.
Oh no.
Everyone was like, excuse, I got something. I need to reply. I just put my head down in the back. I was like, dude, you asked for this. Like, they finna beat the brakes off you in this class.
With their words.
Maybe their fists. You don't know. You don't know in some of those classes. But that infantilizing is like taking a major struggle in someone's life and then making it such a simplistic issue that it no longer carries the weight.
Wow.
So like when you talk about anyone's systemic struggle, like specifically sexism, racism, when you talk about these issues, but you say them in a place that's like, oh, well, that's just like when my kid does this and I have to, tune them up every now and again. No, it's nothing like that.
Yeah. It always seems to go back to, like, I think where it is like, I want to relate. Like with him,
Yeah.
I wonder if that student in his mind was like, I remember one time when I asked my dad if I could mow. Like, he was really trying to
good intentions.
put himself in that
sure.
place, but he knew he could not relate because he didn't have any rights that were not given to him that had been given to other people.
Yeah, he had
other than mowing the lawn.
He had nothing to relate to. And so in that moment, instead of just being like, I just want to learn, like, let me ask more questions. He's like, okay, I think I got it. I think I figured this whole thing out, ladies. Let me help you out.
Let
me go ahead and mansplain this up for you real quick.
But honestly, it feels like that sometimes especially with the social media age.
Yeah.
So, and especially among Christians, I don't know why.
It's hard.
Believers,
So hard.
we have the loudest voices when it comes to this, when it's wrong. It's like, okay, black people, I know what's going on. Y'all are still mad about slavery.
It's just like when I was little and I got in trouble and then I got older.
I still had to pay the
parents. Like, no, that's not.
Because the thing is, in that analogy, I understand the heart behind it. Like, yes, it seems from your perspective, like this is a defiant teenager. But black people are not a defiant teenager.
Yeah. Well, and I heard, so got some great brothers and sisters in Christ who, again, it comes from a good place. We're not condemning people,
Right.
but we're just saying there are ways to be an ally that are not correct. And the infantilizing, how would you like it as a person if someone looked at the hardest struggle you face and they brought it down to the level of a kindergartner or preschooler, or they broke it down to a level of something very easy, like they don't know how you grew up, they don't know your background, they don't know your emotional damage that you carry, yet they can say, well, that's just like this thing, right?
Yeah.
And they may be trying to relate. But if you do this, please know you can't break down a system of generations of death, murder, and rape
And oppression.
and say, hey, that's just like when these two kids are fighting. You just got to get in between, and you guys, can't you love each other?
Yeah.
It's nothing like that.
Well, and if you want a comparison, if someone were to come to you and say, oh, America is having a hard time right now with COVID-19, well, that's just like...
It's just like when you get in trouble and you got to stay home.
Exactly.
Right? You're on punishment.
There's an outrage that people would have if you were to walk up to them and say that.
Yeah.
So think about that.
We got more stuff. Let's keep moving down the list.
Go ahead.
Us versus they language. The we, them language. Especially this, we're speaking specifically to our believers. But if you're not a believer, still listen to this.
Yeah.
Anytime you say them, they, those people, you're automatically excluding people. You're automatically putting things in a us versus them.
Yeah.
A better way would be maybe to say, instead of saying, well, I don't know why they have to act like that. Okay, first, define who they is.
Right.
Because if you're going to generalize and say something that's obviously racist, then say it so we know where you stand.
Yeah,
but if that's not what you mean, if you mean...
Why is this happening?
Or why are the protesters in this case, why did the protesters respond this way?
Yeah.
Like, personalize it so it's not just this general we, they, us, them.
Yeah.
Because the way it's taken, anytime you address these situations and you use this us and them language... you're immediately drawing boundaries instead of saying like using personalized language.
Yeah.
Like the supporters of this cause, the police department in this city, the family of this victim. Like let's these are people. Yeah. Individual people. Like let's personalize it and not just group them.
Yeah. That's good. So another thing that we tend to hear a lot is, I just don't see color when I look at you.
And we notice because everyone's wearing mismatched socks. So we're like, oh yeah, I can tell. You don't.
You know what? I wondered if you were colorblind, and now I really know.
But now, no.
Here's the thing, and we can't stress this enough. I feel like we've had this conversation before on the podcast. We have it often with people in person, on social media. God created ethnicity.
Yes.
If you don't believe that, you need to read a Bible. You need to talk to a Bible-believing pastor, because we are all created in the image of God, correct? If you believe that, if everyone's created in the image of God and everyone looks different,
come on,
I have to believe that God intended for us all to look different.
Yes.
And if he intended for us all to look different, that means he intentionally created races and pigments of skin in different parts of the world on purpose.
That's right. It's God-given.
So if God did it on purpose, why would you want to ignore it?
And again, good intentions. I think what people are meaning is, I don't judge based on color.
Yes.
I don't prejudge based on color. I have no color prejudice.
That's great.
That's awesome.
That's great.
But when you say I don't see color, what you're saying, like what we're hearing, people of color, what we're hearing is, you don't validate my experience. Yeah. That you're assuming my experience into your own. Yep. And I no longer have my own identity. You're saying, I don't see color. You're just like one of us.
Yeah. And that's that dividing line.
Yeah. I don't see you as different. I see you as one of
my kind
that I identify with. And so you have to validate like, oh yes, I appreciate your culture, but I don't have a prejudice against color.
We have some friends. One of them actually, said, it was on social media, he said, of course I see color, but I judge based on character and actions. Like, yes, I see it. I can't deny that you look different from other people. You look different from me, but my judgment is not based on that. Yeah. And that's such an important part to remember. Yeah. The other thing that we have a lot of in our experience is silent support.
Yes. Listen,
which is really kind of an oxymoron.
Silent support. I'm
supporting you.
as you're getting beat up, I'll just watch.
So can I give an analogy of that? Not infantilizing it.
I was going to ask, is it about children? Go.
No, it's about childbirth.
Go ahead.
So I've been in a birth room before.
Once or twice.
And one of the things that I realized early on, I thought that I was supposed to be really quiet when I was first in a birth. I was like, okay, I don't want to talk too much.
You mean as a
doula?
As a doula,
I'm not supposed to be talking because she's trying to focus. But then I learned that actually my silence was not helping her because she needed to hear, you can do this. You've got this. Look at how amazing you're doing this. Oh my gosh, yes, keep breathing like that. Yeah, you got this. Don't give up. Like, even though I felt like what I was saying was just a broken record and like, oh my gosh, I don't think I need this tape in my ear right now. But it didn't matter what I needed. I was there to serve her. I was there to be her ally in that moment and to help her and empower her to give birth. And so that silent support that I thought like, okay, I'll just stand here and give her a thumbs up every now and then. Like, you got this, girl.
You're doing great.
And when she's ready to push, then suddenly come in and be like, yeah, you got it. No, we don't get to wait to come in for the push.
Yeah.
We have to be there like every step of the way. Like, yeah, you've got this contraction. You know, you've got it. You are doing so great. Don't you even let that sweat roll off your brow. Girl, you got it. You do this. That silent support when it comes to social issues is
because so another not an example of that is and our women listeners, you're gonna appreciate this.
Listen up, ladies.
I've been in situations in meetings or boardrooms or board or committee meetings where there's primarily men and a woman may have an idea, and immediately, because of whatever bias or because of whatever, this woman is shut down in the meeting. And if you're a woman who've never experienced this, I need to hear your story. But most women that I know have experienced this. And what tends to happen after the meeting, in the after meeting, is you'll have people come up to that woman and say, hey, that was wrong how they did you. That was terrible. I just want you to know that made me really angry. And then they'll go on about their day. But here's the kicker. That didn't help that woman in that moment. And if you're not willing to stand up in the moment and speak out against injustice, then your support doesn't really help. It's not supportive.
Yeah.
Because people don't need to hear after they've gone through the battle, yeah, I felt really bad for you through that.
I thought that was wrong. You had to go through that.
Yeah, no, they need you in the battle.
Yeah.
And so if you're willing to support people, you're willing to do that publicly.
Yeah.
And here's, am I supposed to talk about it later? Yeah, I'll talk about it later.
Well, and scripture talks about bearing each other's burdens.
That's right.
And being willing to see others' needs as more important than our own.
Yeah.
And so like your need to be comfortable in a situation is not as great as someone else's need to be dignified.
Yeah, because what it is it's, okay, I see how they're treating you and I don't want to be treated that way. So I'm gonna wait till this is over.
Come on.
And then I'm gonna go to you quietly and be like, yeah, that was wrong. I would feel terrible if I was in your position. But I'm not willing to jump in with you and stand, which is, just so you know, that's the definition of compassion, to suffer with someone.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have compassion on someone, if you're not willing to suffer with them, but you're only willing to silently cheer them on from the sidelines, that support doesn't work.
Yeah.
If all it is a private DM and being like, hey, just so you know, everything's good, right? Like, we're cool. But everything on your timeline is devoid of the situation. You're not speaking out. Or if you're at a family gathering and everyone's bashing somebody and you come up to them later like, hey, they probably shouldn't have said that to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, where were you when I was getting beat up?
Yeah.
Like, so silent support, even though I know your heart's in the right place, I don't want this person to feel alone. I want them to know that I love them and I cherish them. Awesome. Now do more. Don't just silently stand by and allow them to get abused.
Yeah.
Step up and speak out against that. I'm going to jump into the next one.
Do it. You going to jump to the next one?
Jumping to conclusions, y'all. So this happens, I've seen a lot in my Christian brothers and sisters, because what happens is we want to assume the best. We want to assume the good guy's always good, the bad guy's always bad, right is always right, wrong is always wrong, people always have common sense. We just want to assume that. And so when we see something, we want to be like, oh, wait, so this bad thing happened to this person was murdered by this cop, or this riot took place. Well, obviously, cops just don't beat up people. So obviously something had to have happened to instigate this. And so we jump to conclusion. I'm going to tell y'all something. Some of y'all wouldn't get no exercise if you wasn't jumping to conclusions. Like, that's the only exercise y'all get. Stop it.
Oh my gosh.
And I know your intentions. We had a beautiful saint, motherly saint. We were dealing with some racial tensions at one time, and we went to this just woman of God, and we said, hey, this is what's going on. And immediately, well, it can't be racial. There's got to be something else.
No, pretty sure we know what we heard.
But through people's lenses, a lot of
Yeah.
times they don't want to acknowledge the brokenness in the world, or it doesn't fit in their worldview. So in their worldview, they're like, well, good is good, bad is bad. So if bad happens, it's that legalistic worldview. If something bad happens to you, who sinned, this man or his mother? Somebody had to.
Somebody did something wrong.
He's blind, so somebody did something wrong. No, that's not the case. And so jumping to conclusions, even though you're trying to do it to support the good and to point out, like, hey, let's just point out these good things. And okay, but you're missing the whole process.
Yeah.
You're jumping to the end point where you think it should be.
Yeah.
And you're not actually giving the story room to be told.
Yeah. Which diminishes the experience of the people in the midst of it.
Completely.
Yeah. So we already talked about infantilizing. Okay, this one is one of my favorites to see, but it's like also one of those like, I really hope you live up to that. It's the keyboard activism, ladies and gentlemen.
Clickety clicks.
I will do everything that I possibly can. And it's always said that way. If I possibly
It's got that exasperated. On the grave of my ancestors, I proclaim.
And it's like swearing without swearing. Like people are like, I swear I will not let another person die.
Blood oath.
But here's the thing, sweetheart. You probably don't have as much power as you think you do.
Well, yeah.
When it comes to the big picture. But the power you do have, yes, exercise that. And we'll talk about that later. But please don't rush into keyboard activism where you are making bold claims and promises to your friends of color, because we're listening and we're watching, we're paying attention like, hey, wait a minute, you said, remember a few months ago, you said if this happened again, you were going to
do everything within your
This
power.
is the list of things you said you were going to do
Yeah.
if this happened. And guess what? It happened. So please don't, as my dad would say, don't write a check with your mouth or your keyboard that your
actions
can't
cash.
cash.
There we go. Sanctified that a little bit.
I was like, I don't know how to finish this one.
Yeah, that's a good one, because we say a lot, and Scripture even talks about be quick to listen, slow to speak. Like
Let
slow
your
to
yes be yes
slow to
and no
anger.
be no.
That's right. You can speak out, and I think people should speak out. We'll talk about that, but let's not be dramatic. You're not getting on a bus right now heading to Minnesota to stop, to physically Rambo these people.
No.
You know what I mean?
Rambo,
like,
yes.
You're actually not going to do that. So let's be real. Let's just, we're not expecting you to be our savior, but we are expecting your support. Yeah. We are expecting you to live into the gospel. So do that.
There we go.
So
you don't need to go beat up the kids on the playground for us.
Exactly. Because you can't beat them up anyway. The kids are big these days. You ever seen, man, I know a kid, 8th grade, he's 6'4".
Yes.
Big dude. Anyway, sorry, I couldn't beat that kid up. All right. So, also waiting for something to happen. This is reactionary sympathy.
And we see this so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Reactionary compassion. Like something happens and now I'm for you.
Yeah.
And then as soon as that thing's over,
I don't hear from you till the next protest.
Or
I don't hear from you.
When the minor things are coming up, when everything, because nothing happens in a vacuum, right? So when you're looking at systemic issues, there are a lot of things that line up that end in what we're seeing in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
So when A, B, C, and D are happening, you're quiet.
Yeah.
But now there's an event. Well, now this shouldn't be. This shouldn't be this way.
Yes,
well, no, it shouldn't
we've been
be.
saying that. We've been saying that the whole time.
From the giddy up.
Yeah.
Like from the get-go. But don't wait. Like where you are now, do something now. Like, and just because it's not happening in your town, in your area, and sorry, we didn't even list this one, but this one just hit me. Another thing that people do wrong is they try to comfort their brothers or sisters of color, or the people that are sharing in the struggle. And they try to comfort them being like, well, that stuff doesn't happen really around here. Like that's some sort of validation. Because I'll tell you, viewing people that look like me murdered on TV is enough to damage a person. That's enough to damage your psyche. Like if you had to watch yourself be viewed, or view yourself be murdered over and over and over, and then every time you see people trying to villainize the person who was just murdered, and you see it,
you can't not think, what if that was me?
Exactly. And no matter
what
where
things
you
have
are,
I done in my life that people will drag up. What
old picture of me in high school would they pull up and be like, look at this thug? Not saying this man's a pastor and he's got children and
no. It would be the picture of you with the braids.
Oh yeah,
and the
sagging.
hoodie.
Yeah, that's me. That's the one that died.
Yeah.
And so if this stuff isn't happening in your area, that doesn't mean that it doesn't affect those in your area.
Yeah. I will tell you, like, there are law enforcement in our community. There are law enforcement in the communities around us.
Guys.
We know the law enforcement here, which I think is such a blessing that we actually, God has placed us in the place of influence that we have. We don't know the law enforcement in the next town over.
Or the next county.
And I will tell you, I drove to the doctor this morning by myself. And I was like, Lord, I just don't want any police on the road.
Yeah.
I'm a woman. A lot of time, for a while, it was like, oh, it's mostly black men.
Not the case.
It's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
And being alone, that changes it.
Yeah.
And if I would have had my kids in the car, I already know that that's not going to stop someone from putting a bullet in my head.
Yeah.
And so, like, realize that just because, oh, well, officer so-and-so would never, first of all, we don't know the situation that they wouldn't not ever do it in. Second of all, we can't bank on that with everyone.
And the fear, this is how terrorism works. Terrorism works by extreme violence being done to a small group of people, and then it sends a message to everyone that looks like that person.
Yeah.
A small group of people get terrorized, and then it keeps everyone else. If you go back to even like the plantation, a slave would run away.
Yep.
They would beat the whole.
Beat them. Yeah.
Well, no, they'd beat the whole plantation.
Yeah.
Or they would cut off this slave's leg. They would do something in such a way that everyone else who even thought about doing anything wrong would be like, ugh.
Yeah.
And so when when your people of color that you know in your life tell you that they have anxiety, that they have angst, you can't just dismiss it and be like, well, that doesn't happen around here. Like, we all know and love you.
And you're just different from them.
Yeah, it's like, yes, I get it. I get where you're coming from, and that's a good heart. You want me to be comfortable. You want me to feel safe. But right now, I need you to enter into this experience with me. I need you to know the weight of what I'm feeling. And you'll never fully know it, but I need you to have some compassion. And so let's talk about some practicalities.
Oh, practicalia.
Come on, some practicalities.
All right.
What can you do?
First, this is a hard one to like tell people to do.
I do it all the time.
You do, and I hesitate to do it.
Be humble. Humility.
Sit down. Be humble.
Shut your mouth. You don't know everything.
Yeah.
You can't look at a situation and say you figured it all out. Your opinion isn't always right. I mean, I can say it a bunch of ways. There's a lot of ways I could say this.
You don't know everything.
Yeah, I mean, these are things that I remember hearing when I was a kid, and so I'm just reciting them because when I was a kid, I remember my mom.
That's why you heard them so much. You
that's
finally
right.
Have it
my mom be like, "Shut up! You don't know everything. You don't know what happened. You didn't see it. There's two sides to every story. Be quiet.
3 sometimes.
Sometimes 5 or 6. You don't know.
Right.
So be humble. Don't automatically assume that your opinion, your point of view, what you say or do is right, especially if you're not involved in the situation.
Yeah, and I'll say if you choose not to be humble, or if you don't choose to be humble, be prepared to be humiliated because that will happen.
Jesus said that.
Like, it will happen.
Yeah.
Whether it's on your social media feed with somebody fact checking you,
or in person,
somebody shoulder checking you. Or just
hopefully they're not chin checking.
Just hopefully not. Or someday maybe you just get this realization when you encounter this same thing that you've been diminishing yourself. So be humble or be humiliated.
There you go.
Another thing you can do, and I cannot tell you the outpouring of love I've felt from people who are doing this. Ask questions.
Which also demonstrates your humility.
Yes.
Being willing to ask questions show that you don't know everything.
Yes. Ask questions and then listen.
Yeah.
Listen to the sound. Remember that song?
Yes.
It's from Dreamgirls.
I do, but I didn't know how to follow up to join in. So yes, I'm with you.
It's Beyonce. You got to know it.
Listen.
But listen. And that means
actively listen.
Shh. Listen. Do you hear that? You just shut your mouth and listen.
And listening means not waiting for your turn to argue. Listening means not trying to come up with a rebuttal. As soon as you hear something, as soon as you see something typed wrong, you're like, oh, they misspelled that. Now I get to argue. No, listen, like use the thing that God has given you, these 2 beautiful ears, and just listen to what this person is saying and hear beyond the words. because sometimes people are going to be saying things that are angry.
Yeah.
But what they're trying to demonstrate is I'm angry and I'm not being heard.
Yeah.
Because no one's listening. Okay, I'm listening. Let's talk. I want to hear it.
Yeah.
I want to hear it. And so listen.
Yeah.
And then this is what I was going to say earlier. Speak out. We talked about silent support. There is an argument in Christian culture, and it's a good argument. I'm not talking bad about this argument. That correction has to come from relationship, because people don't know how much you care, or people don't care what you know until they know what you care, right? And so this is truth. You have to correct individuals through relationship.
Right.
Otherwise, they're not listening anyway, and you're just combating them. You're not actually correcting them.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between individual sin and corporate sin. Individual sin is a sin a person takes on. Corporate sin is the sin of a people.
Yeah,
it's
systemic.
It's a sin that happens in an area, in a region, in a culture, whatever. And the prophets, when they came into town, they would speak out against corporate sin. Not everyone in that town was worshiping Baal, but they'd be like, listen, y'all, stop worshiping Baal.
Well, and they weren't knocking on the door like, excuse me, those of you that are worshiping Baal, I wanted to tell you. Census,
how many of you in here are worshiping Baal? If from 1 to 10, how much worshiping are you bailing? Like, no, they're not doing that. And so it's okay, and it's even called for. There is historic and biblical context that shows us calling out corporate sin is good.
Yeah.
Because if not, we wouldn't have had the civil rights movement. If not, we wouldn't have had the women's suffrage movement. If not, we wouldn't have seen people who are in slavery, in chains, sexually trafficked. We wouldn't see these people freed.
Yeah.
Because if it's like, well, I got to wait till I find a pimp before I can speak out against sex trafficking. No, I can speak out and say it's wrong now.
Yeah. Well, and you look at like most of the major prophets, we see this like addressing the community. But then you have the story of Nathan going to David personally.
Yep.
Because David's sin did have an effect on the community, but it was like, David?
Yeah, David,
you're
you did
messing
this
up right now.
It's on you.
And that was good. So there's that. If you have a David in your life and you're a Nathan or whatever, do that. But if you are a Jeremiah and you need to weep, and you need to maybe go and
need to lament,
do it.
Yeah. So speak out, like not just privately, but publicly in the spheres of influence that you have. If you're a pastor, teach your people. If you're a teacher, make sure you are sharing with your students what it means to love justice, to seek justice, to love mercy.
And here, I will say, I'm going to piggyback off of Eric Mason again. If you are a pastor or any believer, and not just in leadership, if you are a believer and you are not speaking about this, what is you doing?
Yeah, what's going on with you?
How can you not see this as an issue that merits discussing? And don't do the Christianese thing of, well, God's going to just take care of it. We just need to, we just got to pray and then not do anything.
Yeah, no, you have to do something. The next one, other things you can do.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Yes. So there are organizations out there that are, this is a weird wording, but they are pro-oppression.
Yes, there are people that fund racist organizations.
Yeah.
There are people that fund hateful organizations.
Yep. And if you do enough digging, you'll find it. Yeah,
it's easy to search. Just find out where certain organizations get their funding from. Actually, the university in Minnesota, the president put out a letter and said they will not be hiring the Minnesota or the Minneapolis PD to work any of their non-essential events, because before they were hiring them to be security, to do. They said, no, we'll use our on-campus people as much as we can. Yeah. Because they were supporting the police department financially. And that financial pressure has weight. That's why countries put tariffs on other countries. Yep. Because people, when you start hurting their pocketbooks, they start respond. Yeah. And so if there's an issue, especially a racial issue, but any issue that you really are struggling with, you figure out where their money is coming from and you stop supporting that. Yeah. Because if their money is slowing down, they're going to start listening. Yeah. So do that.
There's also a website that you can go to. It's for individuals. It's for organizations. It's called Racial Equity Tools, and it is www.racialequitytools.org.
It'll be down here somewhere on the video.
You can visit there. They have like educational tools. If you want to hold like a meeting in your church and discuss with people, like, how can we enter into the conversation? They actually have ways that you can strategize that meeting so that you are prepared and so that you are able to equip people that are coming to you. So it's really good.
Yep.
Go there.
Awesome. There's so much more we could talk about, but we are going to leave you with this. Go do something. Don't just talk about it, be about it.
Yeah. And know that we are a resource for you. If you need to message us, if you know us personally and you need to call us or text us, please do. We really are receptive to all of it. And you're not going to say anything that's going to shock us or make us make a weird face like that.
We'll probably make that weird face. And actually, this has been the NixMyth podcast. We hope that you've gotten a dose of real life.
No myth.
But before you be blessed, I want you guys to listen to a snippet of this song that we wrote. And if you want to hear the rest of it, find us on our social media and you will hear it. But this is a song that we wrote and just put out last night, right? Called I Can't Breathe. If it blesses you, share it. If you want to hear more of it, find us on social media. And now you can
be blessed.